My name is Jessica Morrow, and my boss promised me a corner office. Instead, he planned to put me in a federal prison. I spent 18 months building his illegal dream machine. He called me the scapegoat. I became the reckoning. I recorded every lie. I saved every receipt. I hid 7 hard drives in the supply closet where I used to cry. When he smiled at the launch and called me his best employee, I had already sent everything to a journalist. The FBI came on a Friday. But the question you should be asking is, who else did I bring with me? My name is Jessica Morrow, but everyone calls me Jessie, and this is my story. I didn't start out wanting revenge. I started out wanting a job. A simple, honest job that paid enough to keep the lights on in my 1-bedroom apartment in Austin, Texas, and maybe, just maybe, let me buy a coffee without checking my bank account first. I was 24. Fresh out of the University of Texas with a degree in business administration. I had dreams, the kind you fold into a resume and present with a trembling hand. I wasn't the smartest person in the room. I wasn't the loudest. I was the one in the back, taking notes, remembering every joke my boss made, every birthday of his kids, every tiny detail that I thought would make me valuable. I was wrong, but let me start at the beginning of the end. The beginning of the Jess I became, not the girl who cried in the supply closet, the woman who made grown men in $1,000 suits sweat through their starched shirts. It all started with a company called Core Dynamics. Sounds impressive, right? It wasn't. It was a mid-sized tech firm that designed inventory software for other, larger companies. We were the gears inside the gears. Invisible, but profitable. In our best year, Core pulled in $200 million. The CEO, a man named Harrison White, took home $20 million of that himself. Harrison White, remember that name? It will come up again. It will come up a lot. I joined Core as a junior analyst in the logistics division. My job was to look at spreadsheets and find inefficiencies. Basically, I was a professional nitpicker, but I was good at it, really good. My first week, I found a $5 million error in a shipping contract. My manager, a weasel-faced man named Gary, took the credit. I didn't complain. I was the new girl. I smiled. That was my first mistake. For 3 years, I gave everything to Core. I worked weekends. I stayed until midnight during product launches. I learned the name of every security guard, every janitor, every receptionist. They called me Sunshine Jessie because I always brought donuts on Fridays. Inside, I was already starting to crack, but I hid it. You have to hide it in corporate America. You can't show them you're tired. They'll give you more work. You can't show them you're angry. They'll fire you. You can't show them you're sad. They'll say you're not a culture fit. The culture at Core was toxic. It looked nice from the outside. The lobby had a living wall of moss and ferns. The coffee machine cost more than my car. But upstairs, in the glass-walled offices, it was a zoo. People threw each other under the bus. They stole ideas. They lied about sales numbers. And at the top of the food chain, Harrison White played with people like a cat playing with a mouse before the kill. I met Harrison once, for real, not at a town hall. A one-on-one. It was after my big second-year project. I had redesigned the entire inventory tracking system for a client named Volta Motors. It was a disaster before I got there. Trucks were leaving half empty. Products were rotting in warehouses. I created a new algorithm. A simple one, really, that predicted demand with 98% accuracy. The project saved Volta Motors $11 million. $11 million in 1 year. Harrison called me into his office. I remember walking down that hall. The carpet was so thick my heels made no sound. My heart was pounding. I thought, this is it. This is when he sees me. This is when I get promoted. His office was the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Austin skyline. He sat behind a desk the size of a small boat. He didn't stand up when I walked in. "Jessie," he said, looking at a piece of paper in his hand. "Jessica Morrow, Volta Motors. Nice work." "Thank you, Mr. White," I said. I stood there, sweating, waiting. He looked up. He had these pale blue eyes. Cold, like a winter sky before a blizzard. He smiled, but his smile was a trapdoor. "You stepped on it and you fell. We're moving you to a new project," he said. "The Nightingale Initiative. It's big, very big. I need someone who can keep secrets." My whole body buzzed. Nightingale. I had heard whispers. A secret project. the kind that made careers, the kind that made you a vice president by 30. I won't let you down, Mr. White, I said. He leaned forward. I know you won't, Jesse, because if you do, I will destroy you. Not because I'm mean, because that's business. Do you understand business? I nodded. I didn't. Not really. I thought business was about spreadsheets and efficiency and hard work. I thought if you did a good job, you got a reward. I was a child. He handed me a thick folder. Read this, burn it when you're done, and tell no one, not your mother, not your boyfriend, no one, or the deal is off. I took the folder. My hands were shaking. I felt like a spy. I felt important. I was a fool. The Nightingale Initiative was a plan to build a new kind of logistics platform. One that used artificial intelligence to not just track inventory, but to predict human behavior inside the supply chain. It was brilliant. It was terrifying, and it was illegal. Because to predict human behavior, you need data, not just shipping data, personal data, emails, phone locations, health records, social media, private conversations. The algorithm would scrape everything. I read the proposal that night in my apartment. I didn't burn it. I couldn't. I was too scared and too curious. I read it 3 times. The law part was buried on page 47. It said, in small print, data acquisition methods may not be compliant with all current privacy statutes. Legal indemnification of employee required. That was lawyer speak for, we are committing a crime, and we will blame you if we get caught. I should have walked away. I should have printed the whole thing and mailed it to the FBI. But I was 27 years old. My student loans were suffocating me. My mother had just been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's, and I was her only child. I needed money. I needed the bonus that came with this project. I needed Harrison White's favor. So I did what a million other desperate, brilliant, terrified women do in offices across America. I said yes. The next 18 months were a blur of code and caffeine and lies. I led a team of 12 engineers. We built the monster. We called it the Oracle. It was a beautiful monster. It could look at a person's digital footprint and tell you, with 96% accuracy, whether they would buy a certain product or quit their job or get divorced or get sick. I felt sick every day, but I kept going. Because Harrison promised me. He promised me a promotion to Director of Special Projects. He promised me a salary of $250,000. He promised me a corner office with a window that opened. I believed him. During those 18 months, my mother got worse. I remember one night, I was at her apartment helping her with dinner. She looked at the stove and started crying because she couldn't remember how to turn it on. I held her hand and showed her. Slowly, gently, and she looked at me and said, "You're a good daughter. What's your name again?" That broke something inside me, but I couldn't show it. I went back to work the next morning and smiled at Gary and nodded at Harrison and pretended everything was fine. I had a friend at work. Her name was Maria. She was the receptionist on the 3rd floor. She was from El Salvador, a single mother of 2 girls, and she had the warmest smile I had ever seen. We used to eat lunch together in the break room. She would bring homemade pupusas, and I would bring my sad grocery store sandwiches. She always shared. One day, Maria came to work with red eyes. I asked her what was wrong. She wouldn't tell me at first. But after a week, she broke down in the bathroom. She told me that Harrison had made a pass at her at the company holiday party. When she rejected him, he told her she would be fired if she told anyone. Then Patricia, the head of legal, made her sign a non-disclosure agreement and gave her $5,000 to keep quiet. $5,000 for her silence, for her pain. Maria needed the money. Her youngest daughter had asthma. The medical bills were crushing her, so she signed. I held Maria while she cried. I felt so helpless. But I also felt something else. A cold, hard knot of anger forming in my stomach. I asked Maria if she had kept any proof. She hesitated. Then she showed me her phone. She had secretly recorded the conversation with Patricia, and she had kept the email offering the settlement. I made copies. I told Maria I would never use them without her permission. But I wanted to have them, just in case. She looked at me with those tired, sad eyes and said, "Jesse, be careful. Men like Harrison, they don't fall. They push other people down and stand on their backs." I didn't know how right she was. The launch was scheduled for a Tuesday. The Monday before, I finished the final test. The Oracle was perfect. I printed the success report and walked to Harrison's office. I didn't knock. I was too excited. The door was cracked. I heard voices, Harrison's voice, and Patricia's. Can't keep her, Harrison. She knows too much about the data sources. Once the public sees the oracle, the lawsuits will come. She's the liability. Harrison laughed. That quiet, cold laugh I had learned to fear. I know, Patricia. That's why we have the indemnification clause. She signed it, didn't she? The second the government comes knocking, we hand her over. She's our scapegoat. We're not promoting her. We're firing her on Wednesday. Wednesday, Patricia said. The day after launch, we thank her for her service, we give her a 2-month severance, and we let her take the fall. By the time the dust settles, we'll have sold the company to Synergy Global. I'll be on a beach in the Maldives, and Jessica Morrow will be in a federal prison. My blood turned to ice, then to fire. I stood there for 10 more seconds. My brain was screaming. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure they could hear it, but I listened to every word. I memorized the tone of Harrison's voice when he said my name, the way he said it like I was a piece of trash he was throwing away. I thought about my mother, about how I had missed her birthday to work on the Oracle, about how I had told her, "Mom, this project is going to change our lives. I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to pay for the best care for you." I thought about Maria, about the $5,000, about the way her hands shook when she told me the story. I thought about every late night I had spent in that building, every donut I had bought, every smile I had faked, and I realized something. I had been a fool, but I wasn't weak. I had been kind, but kindness is not the same as stupidity. I walked back to my desk. I sat down, I opened my computer, and I did not cry. I had cried in the supply closet for the last time. I had cried when Gary stole my credit. I had cried when I missed my mother's birthday for a meeting. I had cried when my boyfriend left me because I was married to my job. No more. I had 18 hours until the launch, and in those 18 hours I became someone else. Not Sunshine Jessie, not the junior analyst, not the scapegoat. I became the reckoning. I started with the spreadsheet, the one I had been building in secret for 3 years. I called it the Ledger of Truth. It was my diary of every crime, every lie, every unethical thing I had seen at Ethicor. I had entries for everyone. Gary, my weasel manager, had faked expense reports for 2 years. He bought himself a boat with company money. I had the receipts, digitally. Patricia, the head of legal, had helped Harrison hide the settlement with Maria. I had the recording and the email. I also had proof that Patricia had been billing the company for a private driver that she used for her weekend trips to a spa in Dallas. That was fraud. Small, but it added up. And Harrison? Oh, Harrison, I had so much on Harrison. He had been siphoning money from the company's research and development fund into a shell company in the Cayman Islands. I had found the transfers by accident while auditing the R&D budget. They were labeled consulting fees, but the consulting company had no website, no phone number, no employees except a lawyer in the Caymans. He had lied to the board about quarterly earnings. I had seen the real numbers. He had told the board we were up 15%. We were down 3%. He had hidden the loss by moving money from the marketing budget to the revenue column. That was cooking the books. He had secretly sold Ethicor stock before bad news was announced. The insider trading was right there in the SEC filings if you knew where to look. And I knew, but the Nightingale Initiative was the real hammer. The data sources we used were stolen from a medical records company called Health Trust. We had paid an IT guy at Health Trust $50,000 to give us a backdoor into their servers. That was a violation of HIPAA. That was a federal crime with a 20-year sentence. And Harrison had signed the check himself. I had all of it. Every log, every email, every recording. I had been paranoid from the start. I had hidden backup drives inside the supply closet. I had copied files to a private server in my apartment. I had recorded meetings with my phone in my pocket. I wasn't innocent. I had helped build the monster. But I was not going to be the only one who went down. At 11 p.m. on Monday night, I made my first move. I sent an encrypted email to a journalist at the Wall Street Journal. Her name was Diane Reyes. She had broken 3 major corporate scandals in the last 5 years. She was ruthless, she was fair, she was perfect. The subject line was, "The Fall of Ethicor, a story you don't want to miss." I attached one file. A summary of the Nightingale Initiative's illegal data sources, just a taste. Enough to make her bite. Then I waited. I sat in my dark apartment. The only light came from my laptop screen. I looked at a photo of my mother on my desk. She was younger in the photo. Her eyes were bright. She had her arm around me at my college graduation. She was so proud. I whispered to the photo, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, but I'm going to make it right. I promise." At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Jesse Morrow, meet me at the coffee shop on 4th Street at 6 a.m. Come alone." My hands were shaking, but I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. I did not sleep. I showered. I put on a simple black dress, no makeup. I wanted Diane to see me, the real me, the tired, broken, angry, determined me. At 6 a.m., I walked into the coffee shop. It was empty except for a woman in the corner. She had short gray hair, sharp brown eyes, and a leather notebook open in front of her. "Diane Reyes." "Sit," she said. I sat. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "This file you sent me. If it's real, it's the biggest story of the year. If it's fake, I will ruin your life. So tell me the truth. Why are you doing this?" I took a breath, and then I told her everything. The 18 months of work, the data theft, the plan to make me the scapegoat, the shell companies, the insider trading, the settlement with Maria. I talked for 90 minutes. Diane did not write anything down. She just listened. When I finished, she closed her notebook. "You're going to lose your job," she said. "You're going to be sued. You might go to jail." "I know," I said. "You're also going to be a hero to a lot of people," she said, "if you're telling the truth." "I am," I said. She nodded. "Then let's take down a dragon." The next 72 hours were a nightmare and a miracle. The launch of the Oracle happened on Tuesday morning. I stood in the back of the auditorium as Harrison White presented it to a room full of investors. He smiled, he joked, he called the Oracle the most ethical AI in the history of logistics. I wanted to throw up, but I didn't. I smiled, I clapped, I shook hands. I saw Maria in the hallway after the launch. She was handing out name tags for the next meeting. She looked at me and whispered, "Jesse, you look pale. Are you okay?" I wanted to tell her everything, but I couldn't, not yet. I just squeezed her hand and said, "Soon, Maria. Everything is going to be okay soon." She didn't understand, but she trusted me. She smiled and went back to work. That night, I went to see my mother. She was in her apartment, watching an old black and white movie. She didn't hear me come in. I sat beside her on the couch. She looked at me and said, "Oh, hello, dear. Are you lost?" My heart cracked. "No, Mom, I'm your daughter, Jessie." She frowned. "Jessie? I have a daughter named Jessie. She's a little girl. She has pigtails." I started to cry, quietly. I didn't want to scare her. I took her hand and said, "Yes, Mom, I'm that Jessie. I'm still your little girl. And I'm going to do something brave tomorrow. Something to make you proud." She patted my hand. "That's nice, dear. Do you want some tea?" I stayed for an hour. She forgot my name 3 more times, but she never let go of my hand. Then, at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, the day Harrison planned to fire me, Diane Reyes published her first article. It was titled, "Inside Ethacor's Secret Spy Machine: How a Tech Firm Stole Your Medical Records." The article was brutal. It named names. It quoted anonymous sources. It detailed the HIPAA violations. It mentioned the shell companies. It mentioned Harrison White's name 14 times. The stock dropped 40% in 1 hour. I was sitting at my desk when the news hit. I heard gasps. I heard phones ringing. I saw Gary run to Harrison's office. I saw Patricia's face go white. Then Harrison called an emergency meeting. His face was purple. He screamed at Patricia. He screamed at Gary. He looked at me. For 1 second, our eyes met. He knew. He didn't say anything. He couldn't. The lawyers were already arriving. The FBI would be there within the week. I walked out of that meeting. I went to my desk. I packed my things, a framed photo of my mother, a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Employee," a small succulent plant. Then I went to the supply closet. I didn't cry. I opened the ceiling tile. I pulled out the backup drives, all of them. 7 drives, hidden in a plastic bag. I walked to my car. I drove to the FBI field office in Austin. I walked inside. I said, "My name is Jessica Morrow. I have evidence of multiple federal crimes committed by the CEO of Ethacor Dynamics." They put me in a room. They asked me questions for 6 hours. I answered everyone. I gave them the drives. Then I went home. I sat on my couch, and I waited. The arrest happened on Friday morning. I watched it on the news. Harrison White, in his $1,000 suit, being led out of the Etha Corps headquarters in handcuffs. He was shouting, "This is a mistake. I'm innocent." Behind him, Gary was also in handcuffs. Patricia was crying. The whole leadership team was going down. I should have felt happy. But I didn't. I felt empty. I felt like I had just watched a car crash. These were people I had worked with, people I had shared coffee with, people I had smiled at. But then I remembered Maria. I remembered her red eyes in the bathroom. I remembered my mother forgetting my name. I remembered Harrison's cold laugh. And the emptiness turned into something else, something harder, something like peace. Diane Reyes called me. "He's offering a plea deal," she said. "He wants to blame it all on you." My heart stopped. What? He's telling the FBI that you acted alone, that you created the Nightingale Initiative without his knowledge, that you stole the data and hid it from him. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a hollow, broken laugh. "He's a liar." "I know," Diane said. "Do you have proof?" I looked at the one drive I had kept, the personal one, the one with the recording of the conversation outside his office, the one where he said, "She's our scapegoat." "I have everything," I said. The trial was 6 months later. I was not the defendant, I was the star witness. The courtroom was packed, journalists from every major outlet. The gallery was full of former Etha Corps employees who had lost their jobs, their savings, their retirement when the company collapsed. Maria was there. She sat in the third row. She was wearing a blue dress and she was holding a photo of her daughters. She smiled at me when I walked in. That warm smile, it gave me strength. My mother was there too. She was in the front row next to her nurse. She looked confused. She kept looking around the courtroom like she didn't know why she was there. But when she saw me, her eyes lit up for just a second. She whispered, "Jessie?" I nodded. Tears filled my eyes. "Yes, Mom. It's me." She didn't say anything else, but she held my gaze, and that was enough. I walked to the stand. I raised my right hand. I swore to tell the truth. Harrison White sat at the defense table. He looked smaller than I remembered. His suit was off the rack now. His hair was grayer. His eyes were still cold, but there was something else there. Fear. The prosecutor asked me questions for 3 hours. I told the story, all of it, the long hours, the hope, the betrayal. The moment I heard him say my name like I was nothing. I talked about my mother. I talked about Maria. I talked about the donuts and the supply closet and the late nights. I wanted the jury to understand that I wasn't just an employee. I was a person who had been used and thrown away. The jury was listening. I could see it in their eyes. Some of them were crying. One man, an older gentleman with a gray beard, was nodding slowly. Then the defense lawyer stood up. A smooth, silver-haired man with a voice like oil. He smiled at me. "Miss Morrow, isn't it true that you built the Oracle on your own? That you hid your work from Mr. White?" "No," I said. "Isn't it true that you stole the medical records without authorization?" "I was following orders," I said. "From whom?" "From Harrison White." The lawyer held up a piece of paper. "This is an email you sent to Mr. White. In it, you say, 'I have a creative solution for the data problem. It might be unconventional.'" Unconventional. That's your word, isn't it? I nodded. I remembered that email. I had been nervous. I had tried to warn him. "Yes, that's my word." "So you admit you knew it was wrong? You admit you were the architect of the data theft? And now you're trying to blame your boss to save yourself?" The courtroom was silent. I felt all those eyes on me. The judge, the jury, the journalists. My mother in the front row, holding my hand through her confusion. I looked at Harrison. He was almost smiling. Then I looked at the prosecutor. She nodded. "Your Honor," I said, "I have additional evidence. A recording." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. "Order, order." The defense lawyer turned red. This was not disclosed." The prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, the defense has been provided with all evidence in a timely manner. This recording was discovered last night. It is fully admissible." The judge looked at me. "Play the recording." My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I had transferred the file to the court system. A technician played it through the courtroom speakers. First, there was static, then Harrison's voice, clear as a bell. Can't keep her, Harrison. She knows too much about the data sources. Once the public sees the oracle, the lawsuits will come. She's the liability. Patricia's voice? I know, Harrison. That's why we have the indemnification clause. She signed it, didn't she? The second the government comes knocking, we hand her over. She's our scapegoat. We're not promoting her, we're firing her. On Wednesday. Harrison, the day after launch. We thank her for her service. We give her a 2-month severance. And we let her take the fall. By the time the dust settles, we'll have sold the company to Synergy Global. I'll be on a beach in the Maldives. And Jessica Morrow will be in a federal prison. The recording ended. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the journalists stopped typing. Harrison's face went white, then gray. He looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked at the table. The jury was staring at Harrison with pure disgust. The older lady with kind eyes was crying. The man with the gray beard was glaring at Harrison like he wanted to hurt him. The judge spoke. Mr. White, I suggest you and your counsel reconsider your plea. Harrison didn't say a word. He just stared at me. His cold eyes were finally broken. He looked like a man who had just realized he was already dead. He changed his plea the next morning, guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Patricia got 8. Gary got 5. The others got lesser sentences. I was charged with a misdemeanor for my role in the data theft. The judge gave me probation and 200 hours of community service. He said, Miss Morrow, you broke the law. But you also showed more courage than anyone in this courtroom. I hope you find a way to forgive yourself. After the sentencing, Maria came up to me. She was crying. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you, Jessie, she whispered. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for not being afraid. I hugged her back. I was afraid, Maria, every single day, but I was more afraid of what would happen if I did nothing. She pulled back and looked at me. You're a hero? I shook my head. No, I'm just someone who got tired of crying in the supply closet. My mother's nurse brought her over. My mother looked at me with those cloudy eyes. She reached up and touched my face. You have kind eyes, she said. Have you always been so kind? And I said, no, Mom, I learned to be kind, after I learned to be brave. She smiled. A real smile. For just a moment, she was the mother I remembered. The one who taught me to stand up for myself. The one who told me that being good didn't mean being weak. That was 2 years ago. Today, I live in a small town in Colorado. I work as a consultant for ethical tech startups. I help them build things that don't hurt people. I make less money than I did at Ethicor, but I sleep like a baby. My mother is in a care facility near me. I visit her every day. She doesn't always remember my name, but she remembers my face. She always says the same thing. You have kind eyes. Have you always been so kind? And I always give the same answer. No, Mom, I learned to be kind. After I learned to be brave. Sometimes I think about Harrison. I wonder if he sits in his prison cell and thinks about the people he hurt. I wonder if he regrets it. I doubt it. Men like him don't regret. They just wait for their next chance to climb. But that's okay. I don't need his regret. I have something better. I have my peace. I still have the backup drive, the one with all the recordings. I keep it in a safe deposit box. Not because I need it anymore, but because it reminds me. It reminds me that corporate America is not about spreadsheets or efficiency or hard work. It is about power. And power, in the wrong hands, becomes a weapon. But here's the thing I learned, the most important thing. Power can also be a shield. A spreadsheet can be a weapon. A quiet girl in the back of the room can bring down an empire. My name is Jessica Morrow. I am not a victim. I am not a hero. I am not a villain. I am the woman who listened at the door. I am the woman who made a copy. I am the woman who did not cry in the supply closet. I am the woman who got revenge. Not for glory, not for money, but for every girl who has ever been told she is not enough. For every employee who has been chewed up and spit out. For every person who has been promised a corner office and handed a pink slip. I did it for Maria, the receptionist who shared her pupuses. I did it for my mother, who forgot my name but never forgot my heart. I did it for the girl I used to be, the one who believed that hard work was enough. And I would do it again. If you are watching this, then take this with you. You are not powerless. You are not invisible. The person who hurt you is not untouchable. Keep the receipts. Make the copies. Listen at the door. And when the time comes, do not cry in the supply closet. Walk out the front door. and burn the whole building down.